The sky over New York turned strange that day. It was not the normal blue, but a deep purple with streaks of silver. People stopped in the streets to look up. Cars halted. The world went quiet. Then they came. 5 massive ships, each the size of a small city, broke through the clouds. They did not attack. They simply waited, hanging in the air like metal mountains. "This is why I hate Mondays," said Tom, a coffee shop worker who had spilled hot drinks all over his apron when the ships appeared. No one laughed. No one even heard him. 3 days later, after much panic and many emergency meetings, the aliens finally spoke. They called themselves the Galactic Federation. They were not one species but many, hundreds of different worlds joined together in peace and trade. "We offer Earth a place among the stars," said High Commander Vrax, a tall blue-skinned being with 4 eyes that blinked sideways. His voice was translated through a small floating orb. "But first, you must prove yourselves worthy." The United Nations Hall was packed. World leaders sat nervously as the alien delegation explained their tradition. "All new species must demonstrate their cultural combat prowess," said Vrax, walking slowly across the stage. 2 guards followed him, their bodies covered in armor that seemed to shift colors with each movement. "This is the way it has always been." "Combat prowess?" asked the UN Secretary. "You want us to fight?" Vrax made a sound like bubbles popping, apparently alien laughter. "Not war," he said. "We do not destroy potential friends. We simply require your best fighters to compete in our combat arena. This is how respect is earned in our federation." The room filled with whispers. Earth had many fighters: boxers, wrestlers, martial artists, soldiers, but how could they match beings from other worlds? Within a week, Earth's leaders gathered their champions. They chose 5: a heavyweight boxing champion from America, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master, a Thai kickboxing legend, a Russian sambo expert, and a special forces commander known for his hand-to-hand skills. The selection ceremony was held in a large stadium. Millions watched on television as each fighter walked onto the field, waving to the crowd. They looked strong, confident, and very human. The alien delegation sat in a special box, watching. Their faces were hard to read, but their body language was clear. They were not impressed. "These are your best?" asked Vrax, leaning over to speak with the American president. "They seem soft." "Don't underestimate us," the president replied, forcing a smile. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten quite good at it." Vrax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Perhaps, but you have no natural armor. No claws, no venom, just those fragile bodies and small muscles." A reporter managed to get close enough to record their conversation. By evening, the whole world knew what the aliens thought of Earth's champions. "They think we're weak," said Jack, the boxing champion, as he watched the news in his hotel room. "We'll show them." But doubt filled the room. These fighters had only ever faced human opponents. What would they find in the stars? The next morning, the Earth delegation boarded an alien shuttle. The 5 fighters carried small bags with their gear and their hopes. As they disappeared into the ship, a silent question hung in the air. Would they be enough? High Commander Vrax sent one final message before departure. "We have reserved your world a small viewing platform in the combat arena. It might be wise to prepare your backup delegation now. Most new species need several attempts before they earn even basic recognition." As the alien ships rose into the sky, humanity watched with a mixture of pride and fear. The greatest test in human history had begun, and already the judges were laughing. The combat arena hung in space like a giant metal donut. It orbited a golden planet in the Cygnus system, 3 days' travel from Earth at the alien ship's incredible speed. Inside the human quarters, Jack the Boxer jumped in place, warming up. His massive arms swung back and forth. At home, he had been undefeated for 7 years. No human could stand against his speed and power. "You're up first," said Lisa, The Earth delegation leader. Her face was tight with worry. Remember what we discussed. Stay back, learn their moves, then attack. Jack nodded. He wasn't worried. He had watched videos of his opponent, a four-armed warrior named Grek from Proxima Centauri. Yes, Grek had 4 arms, but they seemed slow. Jack was sure his quick footwork would win the day. The arena was filled with 50,000 aliens from across the galaxy. The human section was tiny, just 20 seats for Earth's officials and coaches. As Jack walked toward the ring, strange sounds filled the air. The aliens were making clicking, hissing, and whistling noises. It took a moment for Jack to realize they were laughing. "Begin," boomed a voice from above. Jack raised his gloved hands. Across from him, Grek stood on 3 legs. His 4th limb was a tail that moved like a snake. All 4 of his arms ended in things that looked like boxing gloves, but they glowed blue. Jack moved forward, careful but confident. He threw a quick left jab, his famous move that opponents rarely saw coming. Grek didn't even try to dodge. The punch landed on his chest, and Jack felt like he had hit a brick wall. The alien's skin was like rock. Before Jack could pull back, 2 of Grek's arms shot out from the sides. They moved much faster than in the videos. One hit Jack in the ribs. The other caught his shoulder. Jack stumbled back, already hurt. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. Jack never landed another clean punch. When it was over, medical robots carried him out on a floating stretcher. "What happened?" asked the president when Lisa called Earth with the news. "They showed us fake videos," Lisa replied. "They wanted us to underestimate them." The next fighter was Mario, the jiu-jitsu master. His opponent was a tall, thin alien that looked like a praying mantis. Mario tried to grapple with it, to bring it down to the mat where he could use his ground techniques. But the alien's joints bent the wrong way. Every time Mario thought he had a hold, the creature would bend in an impossible direction and escape. Mario lost even faster than Jack had. The kickboxer and the sambo expert met similar fates. Neither lasted more than 5 minutes. The aliens in the crowd were no longer even watching closely. Many were eating or talking, as if the fights were too boring to pay attention to. "They're making the joke of us," Lisa told her team after the 4th defeat. "This isn't a fair competition. They're putting us against fighters we can't possibly beat." High Commander Vrax visited the human quarters that evening. He did not knock. "4 failures," he said. His translator orb made his voice sound almost sad. "Not unexpected, but still disappointing. You have 1 fighter left, yes. The military one." "Commander Davis," Lisa said. "He'll be ready tomorrow." Vrax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence again. "It doesn't matter. The Federation Council has already begun discussions about your world status. You will likely be classified as a protected primitive world. This means no voting rights, limited trade options, and a Federation outpost on your moon to watch over you." After Vrax left, Lisa made an emergency call to Earth. Commander Davis stood beside her, his face grim. "We need something they haven't seen before," Lisa told the Emergency Council. "Our conventional fighters can't win against these aliens. We need a different approach." Back on Earth, a plan was already forming in the mind of Director Reynolds as he watched the defeats on a classified feed. He pulled out a dusty file marked Project Shadow. Inside was a single name and location. "Find me Kai," he told his assistant. "Right now." Snow fell on the mountain compound. Far from any city, the ancient wooden building stood in the shadow of a towering peak. This place had once been a temple, then a training ground, and now it was the last home of a nearly forgotten art. Inside the main hall, 20 students sat in perfect silence. They wore simple black clothes. At the front of the room, a man named Kai moved through a series of positions so fluid they seemed like water. Kai was not large like Jack the Boxer. He was average in height and build, but when he moved, it was with a grace that made the students hold their breath. Every gesture had purpose. Every step was silent. The screen on the wall had been showing the fights from the combat arena. Kai had watched each defeat without comment. Now, as the image of Commander Davis appeared, preparing for what would likely be another loss, Kai finally spoke. "Enough. Turn it off." The students looked confused. One young woman named Ria raised her hand. "Master, don't you want to see the last fight?" "There is no need," Kai said. "He will lose." "How can you be so sure?" Ria asked. Kai walked to the window and looked out at the falling snow. "Because he is fighting their way, by their rules. This is not how we win against a stronger enemy." The sound of a helicopter broke the mountain silence. The students jumped up in alarm, but Kai remained calm. He had been expecting this. Director Reynolds had to hike the last mile up the mountain path after his helicopter could find no safe landing spot. When he finally reached the compound gates, he was cold, tired, and desperate. "I need to see Kai," he told the guard at the entrance. "It's a matter of global security." Kai met him in a small room warmed by a simple fire. Reynolds, still in his government suit, looked out of place among the ancient scrolls and weapons on the walls. "You've been watching the fights," Reynolds said. It wasn't a question. Kai nodded once. "I have." "Then you know we're losing. Not just the fights, but our place as equals in this new galactic community. The aliens are going to put us under their protection, which really means their control." "And you think I can help?" Kai asked. His voice was quiet but clear. Reynolds pulled out a tablet and opened a file. 15 years ago, you were part of a special program, Project Shadow. The record says you could do things that seemed impossible, things that were never explained or replicated." Kay's face showed nothing. "That was a lifetime ago. We need those skills now," Reynolds pleaded. "We need something the aliens haven't seen before. Our normal fighters are useless against them." "I do not fight for glory," Kai said. "I'm not asking you to." Reynolds leaned forward. "I'm asking you to fight for Earth's freedom. If we become a protected world, we lose our chance to grow, to explore the stars on our own terms." Kai stood and walked to a wooden chest in the corner. He opened it and pulled out a simple black outfit, different from what he was wearing. It looked ordinary, but Reynolds noticed strange patterns woven into the fabric. "The art I teach is not for display," Kai said as he folded the clothing carefully. "It was created for times when we faced enemies who were stronger, more numerous, better armed. It was created for shadows, not rings with cheering crowds." "Will you help us?" Reynolds asked. Kai closed the chest. "I will, not for glory, not for victory, but so that humans may walk their own path among the stars." Reynolds let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you. The final fighter, Commander Davis, is scheduled for tomorrow. If he loses, we have one last chance to enter a replacement before Earth's trial period ends." "I will need no weapons," Kai said, "and tell no one what I can do. Let the aliens think I am just another human, weak and soft." As Reynolds left, the students gathered around Kai. Raya looked worried. "Master, are you really going to fight the aliens?" Kai nodded. "Sometimes the best way to preserve peace is to reveal just enough strength that others choose not to test you further." That night, as the compound slept, Kai practiced moves no one had seen for centuries. Techniques designed not for sport or show, but for survival against impossible odds. The news of Commander Davis's defeat spread quickly. The military man had lasted longer than the others, nearly 7 minutes, but the result was the same. Another human fighter broken and carried away on a medical stretcher. When Lisa announced that Earth had one more fighter to present, the alien delegation seemed annoyed. "This is unusual," High Commander Vrax said, his 4 eyes blinking out of sync. "Most species accept their place after such clear demonstrations." "Humans are stubborn," Lisa replied with a tight smile. "Our final fighter will arrive tomorrow." The alien transport that collected Kai from Earth was small and fast. Kai sat quietly during the journey, his eyes closed in meditation. He carried no bags, no equipment, just the simple black outfit he wore. The alien crew looked at him with a mix of curiosity and dismissal. "This one is even smaller than the others," one crew member said in their language, not knowing Kai had been given a translator implant. "The humans must be desperate," another replied. "Maybe they found the smallest one to provide less of a target." Kai said nothing. He continued his breathing exercises, centering his mind and spirit. When they arrived at the combat arena, news of the final human fighter had already spread. A crowd of alien spectators gathered to see this last example of Earth's combat prowess. What they saw disappointed them. "That's it?" asked a large, rock-skinned alien as Kai walked down the transport ramp. "That's their champion." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kai was not tall or muscular. He wore no armor or special equipment. His black outfit looked simple and plain. He walked with his hands empty, his head slightly bowed. Lisa met him at the entrance to the human quarters. Her face showed strain from days of watching her fighters lose. "I'm Lisa, head of Earth's delegation," she said, extending her hand. "Director Reynolds said you're our last hope, but he didn't tell me much else." "There wasn't much to tell," Kai said, shaking her hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "I'm just a teacher." "A teacher of what?" Lisa asked. "Of very old ways," Kai replied. Before Lisa could ask more questions, High Commander Vrax approached with his guards. The alien leader looked down at Kai with what seemed like amusement. "This is your final fighter?" Vrax asked Lisa. "He looks even softer than the others." "Appearances can be misleading," Lisa said. Vrax made that bubbling laugh sound again. "Not in my experience. We have studied your species thoroughly. Your bodies are fragile. Your reflexes are slow. Your senses are dull." Kai said nothing. He simply bowed slightly to the alien commander. "The Federation Council has already prepared your world's protected status documents," Vrax continued. "But we will honor this final match. It is tradition, after all." As the alien delegation walked away, Lisa turned to Kai with worry in her eyes. "They've assigned you to fight Drek, an undefeated champion from a high-gravity world. His skin is like metal, and he's 3 times your weight." "Weight doesn't matter when gravity is optional," Kai said quietly. Lisa frowned. "What does that mean?" But Kai had already moved toward the viewing area to watch recordings of the previous fights. He studied each alien fighter with intense focus, particularly their movements and reaction times. That evening, the arena buzzed with excitement. The betting stations were busy as aliens placed wagers on how quickly Drek would defeat the final human. 30 seconds, one bettor said confidently. "I say 1 minute," another countered. "The human might run away for a while." In the preparation room, Kai sat cross-legged on the floor. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and even. Lisa watched him with a mixture of hope and doubt. "The match begins in 10 minutes, she said finally. "Is there anything you need?" Kai opened his eyes. "Just one thing. When it starts, don't blink. You might miss it." As Kai walked toward the arena entrance, the announcement system boomed overhead. "Final match of Earth's trial. Drek of Graviton against Kai of Earth. Prepare for combat." The combat arena fell silent as Drek entered the ring. The alien champion stood nearly 8 feet tall. His skin looked like polished metal, reflecting the bright lights above. Every step he took made the floor shake. Coming from a high-gravity world had given him incredible strength and density. Drek raised his 4 arms to the crowd, who cheered wildly. Many of the aliens stomped their feet or clacked their claws together in approval. Some waved banners with Drek's name written in strange symbols. Then Kai walked in. The difference between the two fighters was almost comical. Next to Drek's massive form, Kai looked tiny. He wore only his simple black outfit with no visible armor or weapons. He made no grand entrance, no show for the crowd. He simply walked to his starting position and stood quietly. The alien audience started laughing again. Some pointed at Kai, making jokes to their neighbors. Even the official announcers seemed amused. "For this final match of Earth's trial," boomed the voice overhead, Drek of Graviton will face the human Kai. Standard rules apply. The match ends with surrender, incapacitation, or, there was a dramatic pause, death. Lisa watched nervously from the human section. Next to her sat Reynolds, who had arrived just minutes before the match. His face showed no emotion, but his knuckles were white as he gripped his seat. "Begin," shouted the announcer. Drek charged immediately. His strategy was simple and had worked dozens of times before. Crushed the opponent quickly with overwhelming force. The arena floor trembled under his heavy steps. Kay didn't move. He stood perfectly still as the giant alien rushed toward him. "Move," Lisa shouted, jumping to her feet. But it was too late. Drek was already upon Kai, his massive fist swinging down like a wrecking ball. Then something strange happened. Kai wasn't there anymore. Drek's fist hit only the floor, cracking the hard surface. The alien crowd gasped. Kai had somehow moved aside so quickly that many hadn't seen him move at all. Confused, Drek spun around. Kai stood 3 feet away, in the same relaxed posture as before. The alien champion growled and attacked again, swinging all 4 arms in different patterns to block any escape. Again, Kai wasn't there when the blows landed. He appeared behind Drek, still calm, still making no attack of his own. The alien audience fell completely silent now. This was not what they had expected. Drek roared in anger. His attacks became faster, more desperate. He chased Kai around the ring, but the human moved like smoke, always just out of reach, never where Drek thought he would be. What is this trickery? High Commander Vrax demanded from his special box. How is the human moving so fast? For 5 minutes, Drek couldn't land a single blow. The mighty champion was breathing hard now, confusion turning to frustration. "Fight me," Drek shouted at Kai. "Stop running and fight." Kai spoke for the first time since entering the ring. His voice was calm and carried clearly across the silent arena. "I am fighting. I'm just not attacking." Then Kai changed his strategy. Instead of simply avoiding Drek's blows, he began to guide them. When Drek threw a punch, Kai would touch the alien's arm lightly, redirecting the force. Soon, Drek was stumbling, his own momentum turned against him. When Drek charged again, Kai stepped aside at the last moment and gently pushed the aliens back. The small touch shouldn't have had any effect on the massive creature, but somehow it sent Drek crashing into the arena wall with tremendous force. The wall cracked. Drek did not get up immediately. The alien audience was so quiet you could hear the soft sound of Kay's feet as he moved back to the center of the ring. Drek finally stood, shaking his head. No opponent had ever done this to him before. With a roar of rage, he lifted a piece of the broken floor, a chunk of material that must have weighed hundreds of pounds, and threw it at Kai. Kai didn't dodge this time. Instead, he stepped forward, his hands moving in a blur. Somehow, impossibly, he deflected the massive projectile, sending it spinning away as if it weighed nothing. The arena erupted in shocked whispers. "That's not possible," Vrax said, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. In the human section, Lisa turned to Reynolds. "What is he?" Reynolds smiled slightly. "He is what humans were before we forgot the old ways." The match ended when Drek could no longer stand. The mighty champion hadn't been knocked out with a powerful blow. Instead, he had been worn down, his own strength used against him until his legs gave out from exhaustion. As the medical robots carried Drek away, the alien audience sat in stunned silence. Then the whispers began, spreading through the arena like wind through grass. The human didn't even hit him. Did you see how he moved? What fighting style is that? High Commander Vrax called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. The 12 leaders of the most powerful species gathered in a circular room above the arena. "This changes nothing," said one counselor, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. "One victory against Drek is impressive but means little." "I agree," said another. The human must face more challenges before we reconsider Earth's status. Vrax nodded slowly. Then we shall test him properly. Bring forth the Mindweaver. When Lisa was informed of the council's decision, she rushed to find Kai. He sat cross-legged in his quarters, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. They've scheduled another fight, Lisa said, her voice urgent. Tomorrow you face the Mindweaver, a telepathic fighter from the Sirius system. They say he can read his opponent's thoughts before they move. Kai opened his eyes. Good. Good. Lisa looked shocked. How is that good? To read thoughts, one must first find them, Kai said calmly. In the moment of true action, there are no thoughts to read. The next day, the arena was packed. Word of the human strange victory had spread throughout the station. Species that had previously shown no interest in Earth now crowded the stands to witness this unexpected development. The Mindweaver entered the ring first. He was humanoid, but with a head twice the normal size and skin so pale it was almost transparent. Blue veins pulsed across his skull as he prepared his mental powers. Kai walked in wearing the same simple black outfit. He bowed to his opponent, who responded with a confident smile. I see your thoughts, human, the Mindweaver said, his voice echoing strangely as if coming from multiple directions. I know your every move before you make it. Kai said nothing. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a focus so intense that several aliens in the front row leaned back instinctively. When the match began, the Mindweaver stood perfectly still, his large head pulsing with blue light. He dodged Kai's first approach without even looking, stepping aside at the perfect moment. You see, he said to the crowd, the human's mind is an open book to me. But something strange happened as the fight continued. Kai's movements became more fluid, more empty. His face showed no emotion, no intention. He moved like water, flowing rather than planning. The Mindweaver began to look confused. He missed a dodge, then another. His confident smile faded. Impossible, he whispered. Your mind. It's like still water. Kai's victory came swiftly after that. The Mindweaver, unable to predict what even Kai himself did not plan, was quickly outmaneuvered and pinned. 3 more opponents followed over the next week. Each was chosen specifically to counter what the council believed were human weaknesses. Against a gaseous entity that could not be touched, Kai demonstrated perfect timing, using the arena's air circulation system to guide his opponent into a containment field. Against a multi-bodied hive creature, Kai somehow identified and isolated the primary consciousness, causing the others to fall into disarray. With each victory, the whispers among the aliens grew louder. Some began to study Earth's history, discovering ancient texts about ninjas, samurai, and martial arts masters who could perform seemingly impossible feats. They'd been hiding their true abilities, one alien scientist reported to the council. These humans have traditions of combat that focus on efficiency rather than strength, on skill rather than natural weapons. High Commander Vrax watched the recordings of Kai's fights with growing concern. This was not how things were supposed to go. Humans were meant to be classified, contained, controlled. Instead, they were becoming respected, even feared. Enough games, Vrax said finally. Bring forth Morda. The council chamber fell silent at the name. One counselor stood up in protest. Morda has never been used for a trial combat. He is our ultimate champion, reserved only for war. Vrax's 4 eyes fixed on the counselor. What else would you call this? The humans have declared war on our expectations. They must be put in their place. News of Morda spread through the combat arena faster than light. Aliens rushed to buy tickets, book viewing pods, or secure any spot with a view of the ring. No one had seen Morda fight in public for over 50 years. In the human quarters, Lisa paced nervously. They're breaking their own rules by bringing in Morda. He's not part of the usual trial combatants. Reynolds sat calmly, watching Kai meditate in the corner. They're scared, he said quietly. They've never seen anything like Kai before. What do we know about Morda? Lisa asked. Very little, Reynolds admitted. The files say he's some kind of bioengineered warrior, created rather than born. No one has ever beaten him. Kai opened his eyes. There is always a first time. The night before the match, High Commander Vrax visited Kai. The alien leader looked less confident now, his four eyes moving constantly, studying the human. You have surprised us, Vrax admitted, but tomorrow will end differently. Morta is beyond anything you have faced. Kai simply bowed in response. The gesture seemed to irritate Vrax. You humans are strange, the commander said. You appear weak, yet hide unexpected strengths. It makes you dangerous. Perhaps, Kai replied, you should judge less by appearance and more by actions. The day of the final match arrived. The arena was so full that extra viewing screens had been set up in surrounding spaces. Species that had never shown interest in human affairs now watched with intense focus. Morta entered first. Unlike the other champions, he walked in silently, without showmanship or display. His body was humanoid but clearly artificial. His skin shifted colors like oil on water. His eyes glowed green, scanning everything with mechanical precision. When Kai entered, the contrast was striking yet again. But this time, the alien audience did not laugh. They watched in tense silence as the human ninja took his position. Begin, said the announcer, the voice notably quieter than before. Neither fighter moved immediately. They studied each other, circling slowly. For the first time, Kai faced an opponent who did not rush to attack. Morta spoke, his voice like grinding metal. I have studied all your previous matches. Your techniques will not work on me. Kai nodded. I would expect nothing less. The fight began with a test of speed. Morta moved with incredible quickness, almost matching Kai's fluid grace. When they clashed in the center of the ring, the impact sent a visible shockwave across the floor. For 10 minutes, they exchanged moves so fast that many in the audience could barely follow. Morta seemed to adapt to each of Kai's techniques, learning and countering in real time. His mind is artificial, Reynolds explained to Lisa. He can process information faster than any living being. Kai took the first real hit, a strike to his shoulder that sent him spinning across the ring. The alien audience roared with approval. Vrax smiled for the first time in days. But when Kai stood up, he was still calm. He adjusted his stance slightly, moving his hands into new positions. Observe, Kai said to Morta. I have not yet begun to fight. What happened next stunned everyone watching. Kai's movements changed completely. Where before he had been fluid like water, now he became sharp and direct like lightning. His hands moved in patterns that seemed to leave trails in the air. Morta tried to adapt but couldn't match this new style. The bioengineered warrior took one hit, then another. His color-shifting skin flashed warning reds and oranges. Impossible, Vrax whispered. He's using a completely different fighting style. Reynolds smiled. That's the secret of the ninja. They master many arts, not just one. The final moment came when Morta, growing desperate, lunged at Kai with all his strength. Kai didn't dodge this time. Instead, he met the attack directly, his hands moving in precise patterns that somehow turned Morta's own force back upon him. The champion crashed to the ground with a sound like thunder. When he tried to rise, his limbs failed him. I yield, Morta said, the words clearly painful for him to speak. The arena fell completely silent. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single alien began to clap. Others joined in, the sound growing until it filled the entire space. As Kai bowed to his defeated opponent, High Commander Vrax stood up slowly. His expression was unreadable as he announced, "The trial is complete. Earth has earned its place among the stars."